I'm Brandon Poe, and this is the Accountant's Flight Plan podcast, where you can enjoy engaging conversations about mergers and acquisitions and accounting practice management. Listen in on strategies to build a more fun and valuable accounting firm.
Hey, this is Liesl. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Accountant's Flight Plan. We've got a special offer for our listeners. If you want to save $250 on Accounting Practice Academy, our 8-week practice management workshop, use the promo code POD250 when you submit your application and start building a practice you would buy.
Welcome to the Accountant's Flight Plan podcast. I have Josie Parr, CPA, on, and I'm very excited about this conversation with her because I just recently recorded for her upcoming summit called the Profitable Lifestyle Firm Summit. A little bit about Josie. She is a tax expert strategist with over 20 years of experience. She's a CPA and MST. Began her career at a top 100 firm, working with businesses generating millions of dollars in revenue. She refined her skills in tax strategy and discovered a passion for helping service-based businesses increase cash flow and profitability through strategic tax planning. In 2019, she founded Josie Parr CPA LLC, which is a niche practice focused on tax strategy for coaches and consultants. In her first year, she tripled her revenue goals and reduced her work hours to a part-time schedule, all while working in the area she loves, which is tax strategy for small business owners. Welcome, Josie.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great. I love your niche for coaches. That's I bet you make some interesting folks doing that.
I do. And like a lot of things, as we talk here, you might find out I'd say I'm a tax strategist, but it seems like from a career perspective, the strategy sort of comes after I don't do it right. And I just knew I wanted to do tax strategy and took a look at who I was serving. And guess who it was? They were coaches and consultants. Like I didn't have to fix it, right? I was naturally gravitating towards that industry.
It seems like you really are enjoying what you are doing. You are doing this for about 5 years now. You've gotten this summit off the ground, which you and I recorded a part for me to be involved with that. Tell us a little bit about that summit before we kind of get into our normal questioning.
No, that sounds great. No, and I'm glad you mentioned it. So I saw a need for myself, for others, right, to find information. And I know that in my own firm, there was lots of free open information available. And I thought it would be helpful to put something together that was free, all in one spot, that was focused on solo and small tax professionals, right? Instead of thinking from a CPE perspective, but that small perspective where we don't worry about filling 50 minutes, we worry about like very good, applicable, relevant information so that solo and small firms whose budgets might not be the same or who just don't know where to go for some of this information, one spot to come and find all of these experts willing to give you some good, educational content, tips, marketing, some of the compliance stuff, just really a lot of useful information that's going to help you build a firm. And it's called the Profitable Lifestyle Firm Summit because the focus is to make sure that, you can be profitable while also still enjoying your life, being happy in what you do.
Yes. So can people find it by just Googling that title?
Yeah, so profitablelifestylefirm.com is where you can find it. I'm pretty sure you'll link that in the show notes. If you are unclear, if you look up Josie Parr CPA, it will put you through to my website. You'll be able to see a link to that and go over and be able to find it there.
All right, so a little background. How did you choose to be an accountant? What was the driving force behind that decision?
What do they say? I didn't choose the accounting life; it chose me, right? No, I'm just trying to be funny, but honestly, my whole focus when I was in my early 20s was to get a degree, and financially, it didn't work out for me to go to school full time. There wasn't this, hey, pick your school, go for 4 years, come home with a degree, and I was working full time, and I had started to gain some college credits, and the local high school was offering classes from the college that was nearby, and I just wanted a degree, so I signed up. I didn't have any money. I was in my early 20s, so I took my credit card and I put it in and I started taking classes. And I did that a couple times, and Financially, that was not a good plan. I knew that the credit card financing plan was not going to get me very far. So I said, how do I get financing? How do I get financial aid? And they said, well, you have to matriculate. I'm like, what's matriculating? Officially apply to the school. Okay, you have to pick a major. So I had to pick a major. And of course, I picked business administration, right? And they said, that's too general. I'm like, well, what else is there? Like, concentrate on something. I'm like, well, I took a marketing class and that was okay. I took an accounting class and I didn't have to study for it. So I thought, oh, I'll pick accounting. So probably in the same amount of time that I told you that story, that's probably the length of thought I put into picking it, because my focus was on just getting in there and getting started. I didn't even worry about whether that would be my career path, but it was the most random, successful mistake I've made, because I really love what I do.
Nice. Love that. Well, that was bold for you to just put down the credit card and start your education that way. Obviously it worked out. So that's awesome. So I want to ask you about challenges, and you work with a lot of small businesses and small practitioners and coaches. What do you see as the greatest challenge in our industry, in the accounting industry right now?
I think the biggest challenge that we see right now, it's the demand, right? Demanding clients, demanding deadlines, demanding technical knowledge and information. That is becoming harder and harder for professionals to manage and process and want to stay in the profession, right? We all have a little bit of burnout, a little bit of overstress, and there's a lot of shift coming with the way people are managing their practices or opening their doors. But if that is not addressed, nobody's going to want to stay and remain an accountant. We all know a lot of accountants are retiring. So I really think that's the biggest focus. Like, if we can't figure out how to make it so that every word in our profession doesn't start with demanding, no one's going to want to be in a demanding profession.
I agree. I think the thing I see with practitioners is they just don't have enough time. There's not enough hours in the day. And they complain about just lack of free time and time where they're, able to unwind. And it's not going to get easier initially. I think the staffing shortage is going to get worse before it gets better. So figuring these things out is crucial. I like how you phrased that. On the flip side of that, there's usually a lot of opportunity when there are challenges. What do you see as the biggest opportunities in the industry right now?
Well, I think the biggest opportunity is taking those challenges and figuring out how to make it work for you. Because there is this shift in general, and it's not a secret. Everybody sees it, right? This old school way to run accounting practices is not working anymore. And then for us solo and small professionals, there's an enormous amount of opportunity, because we don't have these gigantic, enormous, corporate structures, so to speak, at the top where we have to meet these company criteria. We can boil it down and start to address those right here and right now. So instead of just being overworked, not having time, having demanding clients, having all that, we now get to sort of be able to pick and choose our clients, pick and choose how we want to operate, how we're going to price. Think about it. Clients would show up, you'd say, what do you want? Here, we'll serve you, and here's the market price. That's not happening anymore. So the opportunity to basically transform your firm or start a firm with a specific niche client pricing system in mind, it's unlimited.
Yeah. I think it's just becoming intentional, right? It's going from that reactive mode and letting everything around you sort of dictate your schedule and your everything, to being, okay, I'm going to be intentional about this, and I'm going to create the practice that kind of works for me and my lifestyle. So what do you think, what's one of the kind of funniest, do you have a funny client story or just professional story that you can share with our audience? I love to hear funny stories. I've had some really interesting ones from accountants, and a lot of people think of accountants as sort of these, boring profession. I'm finding out by asking this question, it's very much not a boring profession.
So I know you asked this question, and I'm semi-prepared, and I do have to say, I'm not trying to say we're boring, as accountants, but funny isn't the first thing you associate with funny, or with accountants rather. So I'm like, I've got to have something that's funny that's happened to me. So I'm going to take one for the team here, and for all new accountants, I'm going to help you out, but I'll share a story of early in my career when I started. We all had to audit at the firm. They just hired everyone into auditing, and we did a little bit of a tax. It was a very small firm that merged through the years and became that top 100 firm you mentioned, at the up front of the podcast. And I was auditing, and I was a pretty competitive person. Sometimes I still can be that way. And they kept talking about this employee. And every time I asked how to do something, they said, well, do what this employee did, right? I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, this person must have been good. And if you've done any auditing or accounting, for the most part, like, there's a lot of war stories out there. Everyone says that, oh, remember what this person did, right? Whether it was good or bad, you knew the people that left that were no longer there. You knew a little bit about them. And this person was not there because I didn't see anyone on the list with this name, but over and over, like, this was my competition. So I was paying attention, and time again, every single job, they mentioned this person who I was supposed to follow for the best way to approach each engagement. So, I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this. And one day I said, you guys are constantly talking about the work papers that this person does, but I don't see them anywhere or hear anything. And they just looked at me and stopped. And I think some felt bad for me. And anybody who knows where I'm leading up to is like, the person's name was Sally. Well, here, I thought Sally was an actual employee, Sally, but Sally was not in fact an employee. Sally is the acronym for same as last year. So literally, in the second year of my career, I realized that Sally wasn't just someone that did work papers, and she was the bomb, man, because that's who. Follow Sally, do what Sally did, right? So Sally is not a person. If you are a new staff person, it is the acronym for same as last year. Just follow what was done last year. So that's, like I said, taking one for the team there, hopefully helping somebody out, but feels silly now, but I truly believed it was a person.
That first year is a whirlwind. You go into auditing. At my first year, I was an auditor, and it is a little bit overwhelming. Maybe it's better now, but when I came in, it was quite overwhelming. So that's pretty funny. Well, how did you make the leap from going from a big firm, a top 100 firm, to launching out on your own? I always find those are really interesting decision points for people, because that's a leap of faith you have to take to do that.
Yeah, I get asked that a lot, and I wish I had a hero war story to tell, but it's more that I was burned out, and I was just in this environment where the requirements just seemed to be more and more and more, and I didn't want to keep up with that, right? I was getting to that pivotal point in my career. Do you want to be a partner? What's this going to look like? At the same time, my husband and I decided to relocate to Florida. So I lived in Pennsylvania, and I now live in Florida. And when I did that, I did start with another firm, and it was very similar. Nothing wrong with the firm, nothing wrong with the first firm. That's where I got a lot of my knowledge and expertise, but those demands were there. So kind of just not knowing what else to do, but recognizing that I really loved working in tax, I decided to go out on my own. So that's how I started. I just looked around and said, the only way I'm going to be able to drive the ship and take some of that away, for me, this is not for everybody, right? There are other, great firms that are doing that, but where the places I was at, that was the only way for me to get where I wanted to go. And I had a vision for it too. It wasn't a clear vision, but it was, there was enough in me as I thought through this process that I felt confident that I could be successful.
Yeah. And that's awesome. I mean, you broke out on your own, was it 2019?
Yeah, the end of 2019, I did.
Right before COVID.
Yeah, I remember in about March thinking, this might not have been your smartest decision, but it turned out absolutely wonderful. I didn't know that at the time, but yeah, it was scary when that was all happening.
And when did you decide to launch the summit?
So throughout the first couple of years on my own, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I knew that I needed to be intentional rather about the decisions that I was making. And I set some boundaries up and then, recognized I really just wanted to be in tax when I was kind of taking on work that didn't, fit. So I started to build out this practice for just tax. And when I told other people about it, they're like, well, I want to do that too. And that turned into me helping other people first, just off the cuff or on small projects. And now I actually have a program where if people want to come in and they want to become tax strategists and they want to hear more about the model that I choose to use, that they can kind of make their own version of that model and share in that success. And then, just started the summit from there. So it's just like kind of one thing led to the other, led to the other.
Nice. Well, I got a couple of little finishing questions. So I always like to ask a guest about what they're reading about an impactful book. What do you think is maybe one of the most impactful books that you've read?
Mm-hmm. Oh goodness, there's so many books I think that are meaningful. For me, right about the point where I was making the shift and deciding to, when I left the firm I was at, that was the firm I started with. If you look at my resume, it looks like I moved. They just merged, right? I was still with the same core group of people for almost 2 full decades. I worked at this firm. I did part-time in the middle when my kids were little, but leading at that firm was challenging for me. I was a little bit different. So when I say that, if you take a personality test, mine wasn't the same as everybody else's. I was kind of an outlier. So I had to figure out how to lead. And I read this book called Leading from the Front. It's by Angie Morgan and Courtney Lynch. They are retired military professionals. And it just really gave me a lot of guidance and more direct skills and tips to use when leading. And I really think that put me on a great path towards starting to lead, without worrying about things that, might happen. And obviously they're both female and they talk about what it's like to be in that kind of environment, but still have to lead. And we all know that there is, if you look at partners or leadership, there's still a general feel that it's mostly male. And I don't want to make this male or female, but it was a great resource for me to figure out where I fit in there. So that made a big impact for me.
Awesome. No, it's great. And are you reading anything right now that's worth sharing?
I've read the first chapter twice. I have some other focus right now, but the one that I'm reading is called Split the Difference. And I'm going to look again to it's Chris Voss is the author.
Yes.
And it's basically about negotiating, right? He says, negotiate like your life depended on it. He was a negotiator. And I kind of chose that book because I feel like that's all I do all day. It's a series of mini negotiations, right? You're negotiating with the client on when they're going to give you their documents. You're negotiating on what you are going to do. You're thinking, even if it's an internal negotiation, what is the price of this engagement? What is the, am I going to spend this money? You negotiate back and forth with yourself, whether this is a good buy or not. So that's what I'm hoping. I want to get that information to help me recognize and then make sure I'm, recognizing those negotiations, whether they're, with myself or not. Thinking I'll probably use it more on my adult children than maybe in my business, right? Because they're still negotiating with me. So, but that's the book I'm reading.
That's interesting. I've got that on my list of things I want to listen to. So I like to listen to audiobooks, and that is available in the audiobook as well. Because he was a famous hostage negotiator, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
That's correct.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a great one. Well, Josie, this has been awesome. What's the best way for people to follow you or connect with you online?
I have Facebook pages and website pages. My firm is my name, Josie Parr, CPA, LLC. My coaching is actually a business now. It's called Solo Tax Coach. So if you look that up, you'll find that. I'm on Instagram. You will find that I do not post a lot. That's okay. If you want to reach me, I'm old school with email. Send me an email. Reach out to me that way, and I'll promise I'll respond.
Awesome. We'll put all those in the show notes. Josie, thank you so much for joining the podcast, and look forward to your upcoming summit. The summit's
It's August 27th, 28th, and 29th. The summit is pre-recorded, so you will get access each day to these speakers. So it's a really nice structure for those of us that are busy. You don't have to be there at 8 a.m. for this hour or that hour. You can kind of pick and choose what you want to watch throughout the day.
Nice. All right. Go check out the summit. I've got a little segment in there, so hope that does really well. And that's coming up soon. So go check it out. Thanks, Josie.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Accountant's Flight Plan podcast. You can keep the momentum going by subscribing and sharing your thoughts with us. Visit our website at pogroupadvisors.com for more resources and tune in next time for more exciting conversations like this one.